Good day, everybody. Fourth day of session for some of us. Things are getting pretty silent and pretty still. Day 4, you can really feel the intensity and the energy in this room. I'm just feeling kind of moved to just share a moment of loudness with everybody. So on the count of 3, let's just all make a really loud noise. Kyoshin, you can unmute and join us. 1, 2, 3. Ah! Yeah! Just curious what that would feel like. So I wanted to pick up where Sason left off yesterday. She was talking about the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, breathing. We talked about the parasympathetic nervous system, which kind of came out of nowhere. And so, yeah, just maybe just look for a little bit of clarity around. I wanted to get a little bit of clarity around what we were talking about yesterday. So the Four Noble Truths, sometimes with all this Zen stuff, it's hard to remember the basics. Getting lost in koans and 3 tenets and shikantaza and all these kind of like fancy tools that Zen has. I know I myself sometimes lose track of the fact that like I want to stop suffering. Not for myself, I want to stop the phenomenon of suffering. And we all talk about all the different whys of why we practice. And the Four Noble Truths, I mean, I remember when I first heard the Four Noble Truths, and it just spoke to me so loudly because I was a kid, I was in school, and I just remember having this feeling of like, okay, so I'll do homework, I'll take tests, then I'll have summer break, and then I'll do homework, and then I'll take tests, and then I'll have summer break, and do that for another like 8 years, and then I'll get a job, no more breaks, have a family, change diapers, watch my body decompose, and that's it. And I remember feeling like a really deep feeling of like, what a jip. I know that maybe that word is offensive. What a bogus deal that is. And so I remember when I first heard that there was this guy 2,000 years ago who was like, yeah, it seems like you get this bogus deal, but I have this experience, I have this intuition that this whole birth and death thing is not what you think it is. And the suffering that comes up from your typical brand name birth and death is not necessary. And there's a way to kind of see that this birth and death thing is actually kind of a delusion, to think that you are a thing that is born and then dies and takes tests and raises a family, in a way is kind of a delusion. So a little disclaimer before I keep going. I appreciate you guys letting me take lunch off because, we're sitting pretty hard and it is a little more difficult to kind of formulate cogent flow for a talk. And even with missing lunch and trying to put this together, this might just be, there is a right way to present this and I don't think I have it. So just bear with me. I think it'll make some kind of sense though. But basically, ending suffering. And as Sason said yesterday, there's like thousands of ways to end suffering. There's therapy, there's physical therapy, there's feel good meditation, there's MDMA. If anyone has tried that, it's a wonderful way to end suffering. There's falling in love. There's, all different kinds of ways to heal and end pain or navigate pain or transform pain. And, people coming to session, including myself, very rightly ask, why am I doing this? Why would I come to do this practice, this really intense, sitting, heavy, silent, physically painful, emotionally painful, psychologically painful thing, especially when I think we can all relate, it doesn't necessarily do much for you. A little bit here and there. Concentration is good, and breathing from the belly can help the parasympathetic nervous system like we talked about yesterday, and that's cool. But as far as ending suffering in a lasting way, at least I can speak for myself, for a really long time I didn't quite get it because it wasn't working. It wasn't making me richer, it wasn't making me cooler, it wasn't making my problems go away, it wasn't making my hangups go away, my traumas wasn't necessarily just taking away. Whereas I would go to one hypnotherapy session and totally take care of one of my patterns in an hour, or have a conversation with a friend and they say some kind of phrase and it all of a sudden, boom, totally changed my life. So I'm just thinking why, what's going on here? I came to do Zen and kept coming to do Zen, especially after a while. I pretty much only came because of the koans. I was dead set on winning. I wanted to pass all those motherfuckers. I wanted to be competitive about it and be faster than this person. You know what I mean? That kind of aspect of the koans bit me. And without that, I don't know if I would have continued to sit in pain and give up a week of my life or a weekend of my life to do this. And so, so what are we doing here that has anything to do with ending suffering? And I think it's so hard to talk about, but there's something about this word ending, right? The third noble truth. There is a way to end this suffering. There's a way out of this cycle of birth and death, karma. And I just think that the ending that the Buddha is talking about isn't the kind of ending that we're used to. It's not, you'll never feel pain anymore, or you'll never feel suffering anymore. I don't think that's what it is. I think it's more, it's, there's so many ways to say it and they're all just so cheap, but it's, there's still pain, there's still suffering, but it's not something that happens to me. It's very subtle, and it's, me talking about it, isn't really worth a damn. It's all about us, really manifesting no suffering for ourselves, right? It's not so much ending the suffering, it's ending the very notion of suffering. I don't know if that means or rings or resonates at all. It's so hard. But I wanted to kind of put it in context of something, see if this could help me talk about it better. I'm gonna do a little bit of nepotism here. I have a cousin named Cousin Ben on my mom's side. He's a professor at Virginia University, University of Virginia, and he published a study about a year or so ago that became really famous. And this is like every academic's dream, is to publish a study that becomes famous. He got an article in the Washington Post. Him and his partner got invited to like NASA and Tesla and Mercedes, like all these big corporations read this article and just had to hear um, about his findings. And that's probably his 15 minutes of life, because academics don't really get much shot for much more than that. But his study was basically, he studies behavior and psychology, and his study found that humans across cultures, he did studies in like 4 or 5 different countries around the world, and the study showed that humans, adults, will generally, pretty clearly, choose to fix a problem by adding things, and will very rarely think to subtract things to solve the problem. And it's really interesting to read about. Obviously, if you're interested, I can send you the article. I can even send you the full study that they published in a scientific journal. But just really interesting experiments where people would, when given a Lego set with one leg on it and being told you need to make this a stable structure and we'll give you $1, something like 75%, I forget what the number was, very clear majority, added 3 legs as opposed to just taking the one off and putting it on the table. And so, obviously, or apparently, corporations, businesses looking for the bottom line found a lot of use in this. And I don't think the article is, or the study is making a case that subtractive problem solving is better by nature, but just that in circumstances where subtraction would be the easiest, most convenient, superior answer, people would still instinctively add things. And that just kind of popped in my head today as I was sitting and thinking about what to talk about, that Zen, and particularly Sesshin, not Zen, but Sesshin practice, I think is one of these subtractive solutions, one of these subtractive behaviors. So many of our ways of wanting to end suffering are additive. Adding a medicine, adding a mantra, even a lot of the spiritual stuff. We want to add sayings, we want to add wisdom, we want to add, good feeling. And it reminds me, it's funny, I'm like, every interview I've had with someone has given me something to talk about this. But there was a koan, someone just mentioned, the Buddha says something fancy. Let me see if I can find it. I think I have it here. Sorry for the hold up. Okay, when the Buddha was born, he walked 7 steps and pointed to the heaven with one hand and to the earth with the other. Looking around in the 4 directions, he said, "Above the earth and below the heavens, I alone am the honored one." All right, so this is kind of a statement of enlightenment, right? This I alone is the big I. the true self, empty I that we all share. So that's a beautiful, flowery, grand statement that, we all want to hold on to, and like, oh, what is that? I alone, how beautiful, no heaven, no earth, all these like words. And then Uman, in the same koan, Uman said, if I had seen him at that time, I would have killed him with one blow of a stick and would have made a dog eat him up. After all, the world must be at peace. And I love that so much. That's the heart of Zen to me, and what differs about our lineage and our practice from a lot of other spiritualities. It's basically a very direct, kind of startling way of saying kill the Buddha, which we've all heard. If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. And I think this like points to the nature of our subtractive practice. All these notions, these ideas, these mantras, these phrases, even the insights that we come up on our own. Kill that shit. Let it go. That's what not knowing is. The first tenet, we talk about the 3 tenets all the time. Bodhidharma talks about not knowing is the most intimate. And so again, it's nice to say that and read that and hear that, but to really, really embody that and practice that. Letting go, true letting go of everything I think is holy, everything I think is right, good, better, superior, sacred, enlightened, all these things. And that aspect of our practice, I think session is the best thing in the world. I don't know what else. I don't know what subtractive spiritual practice there is that hits quite as hard as session. And so going back to what Seisun was talking about, she was getting into the Eightfold Path, right? And she was referencing this article in Tricycle by this guy. What's his name? Walpola Sri Raula. Sounds like a Theravadan name, but I don't know. Interesting fact, Raula is what the Buddha named his son. Am I right? Is anyone? I think I'm right. He named his son Raula, and Raula translates to obstruction. You obstruction to my peace. Go ask your mother. Anyway, so this guy writes about the Eightfold Path, and apparently there's, one way of seeing it is that the Eightfold Path is split into 3 parts. There's ethical conduct, which is right speech, right action, right livelihood. There's wisdom, which is right thought and right understanding. And then there's right mental discipline, which includes right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And just kind of, trying to put all of this together into something that makes sense. Like I said, neither my cousin nor the Buddha are going to say that subtractive practice is the best and that's what you should be doing. I think just like anything else in Buddhism, it's both. Yes and no. Always at the same time. So, ethical conduct, right speech, right action, right livelihood. This is basically the precepts, right? I think that's what Seisun was saying yesterday. The precepts are our ethical practice, and they're very much a part of Buddhism, and they're very much a part of our lineage and practice. But that's additive. At least the literal aspect is additive. I'm going to add this practice of not lying. I'm going to add this practice of watching myself, and my relationships. So that's one one category of the Eightfold Path is the additive ethical practice. And, there's a lot of teachers who teach the precepts like kind of only like that. You should practice non killing, and they don't even look at the relational or the intrinsic aspects, which basically are also kind of, at least the intrinsic is subtractive. Anyway, getting in the weeds. Then we go to the wisdom category, which is right thought and understanding. And that is also additive, right? As we live and we follow the three tenets: not knowing, bearing witness, loving action, we gain wisdom. We add new perspective on things. So those are additive practices. But, at least in the context of this way of looking at the Eightfold Path, this mental discipline, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, I think this would be the subtractive element of the Eightfold Path and of our practice. And bring it all together, that I think is what session is. In session, we're not really talking about the precepts much. We're not really gaining a lot of wisdom. We're just sitting, weeding. There might be some wisdom in weeding or cleaning. You might kind of gain some new perspective on things. But for the most part, we're not interacting. We're not engaging ethics really, or ethical practice. We're just cultivating samadhi, right concentration, and right effort. Although I guess, right effort involves studying the precepts too. But I think for the purposes of what we're saying here, I don't know, I just kind of like how that ties into subtractive practice, and how hard that is. And how this study that my cousin did shows that like we do not have that built in us to like go to the subtractive element. Subtractive problem solving, subtractive ways of ending suffering. Yeah, I like that session, this practice of really cultivating no self, is the practice of cultivating no suffering, right? The Heart Sutra says no suffering, no cause of suffering, right? So this part of our practice doesn't aim to assuage suffering or improve pain. It seeks to damn right uproot the very notion of pain. So yeah, my knee hurts. The nerve endings are active. But the idea that I am a person experiencing this pain can totally dissipate. And that's just a different relationship to suffering. And if you read what this guy writes about right concentration, and Jason was talking about it yesterday, there's 4 stages of concentration. In the first, passionate desires and unwholesome thoughts. What do you say? In the first stage, passionate desires, thoughts like will, skeptical doubt are discarded. Then in the second stage, all intellectual activities are suppressed. As Sason said, suppressed is not a great word, but let's, either way, subtracting, discarded, released, let go. In the third stage, the feeling of joy also disappears. Finally, in the fourth stage, all sensations, even happiness and joy, sorrow, disappear, right? So there's kind of the direct evidence of the subtractive nature of this practice. So, let's see. I think that kind of makes the point I was trying to make. I hope it reveals some kind of motivation to keep on going. It's very hard to do these days. and it's even harder to want to come back and do them again. And sorry, we have our dog chorus. So I don't know, I guess just commend yourselves knowing that the subtractive solution, apparently, according to Cousin Ben, is very rare and not easy. Oh, another thing I wanted to say from his study. So they tried all different kinds of things, different tasks, different contexts in which to encourage or discourage additive versus subtractive. You know, these academic studies are like super involved, and he's got charts, and it's, you know, crazy. But this one sentence in the Washington Post article, undivided attention helps. To test the effects of distraction, we assigned some participants to solve the grid puzzle while monitoring a string of scrolling numbers. Think of it as driving while texting. The distracted participants were more likely than the focused participants to resort to the inefficient additive solution. So that's, I don't know, that's really interesting to me. And that's, you know, that's Japanese folks, that's German folks, that's American, that's across the board. And it kind of makes sense that here in Sesshin, we make a really clear point to take away distractions and really commit to this subtractive practice, subtracting our ideas about things, subtracting our tendencies and our habits and our instinctive reactions to things. And yeah, shikantaza, just be the breath, doing koans, all this stuff is kind of a subtractive solution to what am I? To me, that was my problem. That was the problem to be fixed. What am I? Just a test taking, baby making, body deteriorating death machine? How does that make any sense? And I think this subtractive practice is a really powerful way to get to the bottom of that. So I hope this helps encourage you. We only have another 33 hours. Who's counting? No, wait, it's more than that. It's more than that. It's 45 hours. Let's milk each and every one of those hours.